Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. According to Bill Priestap's handwritten notes from the January 24th, 2017 meeting, a meeting that you, Mr. McCabe, attended, the FBI's strategy with General Michael Flynn was to, quote, get him to lie so we can prosecute him or get him fired. And also, quote, if we can get him to admit to breaking the Logan Act, give the facts to the Department of Justice and have them decide, close quote. Mr. McCabe, is it typical for leadership at the FBI to strategize as to how to get subjects of an investigation to lie, as in this case, in an informal interview without counsel present?
Well, I can't, I'm not going to speak for Mr. Priestap's notes, but I can tell you—
I'm just asking you whether it's typical.
I can tell you that it is common to discuss before an interview the many different ways that that interview might turn out. And one of those ways is that the subject or the witness you are interviewing might be deliberately deceptive. And so it is common to think through how you would handle that.
Okay. Now, in his 302 interview, Peter Strzok stated, quote, before the interview, McCabe, the FBI general counsel, and others decided agents would not warn Flynn that it was a crime to lie during an FBI interview because they wanted Flynn to be relaxed. And they were concerned that giving warnings might adversely affect the rapport, close quote. Is it normal for FBI leadership to instruct agents to not inform interviewees of their rights in investigational interviews?
There is no requirement to tell any witness or interviewee that it is a crime to lie to the FBI. Okay. It is very common for agents and their supervisors to discuss how they're going to handle these different elements of an interview before they go in and do it.
But I assume you don't do that all the time. And one of the reasons you don't do that all the time is because you rely on informal interviews. You get a lot of information out of them. And if you're constantly warning them in advance and making them feel like they're targets, that's a problem. But it also can become a problem, and it invariably does, when people in an informal interview are lured into an informal interview with one set of expectations that you've created for them, and you routinely dash them. Now, when scheduling the January 24th meeting with General Flynn, you threatened to elevate the issue of Flynn's call with Kislyak to the Department of Justice if he appeared at the interview with counsel. Statements made by General Flynn during this very same interview, where you advised him to appear also, were used as the basis for his prosecution. So is it standard practice for the FBI to threaten high-level administration officials if they refuse to appear for interviews without counsel, or at least without somebody from the White House counsel's office?
Well, the premise of your question is absolutely false. I did not threaten General Flynn with anything. General Flynn and I, during a very short conversation, I asked General Flynn if he wanted to have a representative from the White House counsel's office or his own attorney attend the interview. And I simply told him that if that were the case, that I would need the agents to also bring an attorney from the Department of Justice. Yep. General Flynn very quickly replied that he didn't want to bring an attorney to the interview, which is certainly his right, and we proceeded in that way.
Okay. I'm looking at your notes regarding your conversation with General Flynn. Quote, I explained to Lieutenant General Flynn that my desire was to have two of my agents interview him as quickly, quietly, and discreetly as possible. He agreed and offered to meet with the agents today. We had some discussion about timing and ultimately agreed to conduct the interview at his office in the White House at 14:30 this afternoon. I explained that I thought the quickest way to get this done was to have a conversation between him and the agents only. I further stated that if General Flynn wished to include anyone else in the meeting, like the White House counsel, for instance, that I would need to involve the Department of Justice. He stated that this would not be necessary and agreed with the agents without any additional participants. That, to me, at least carries a certain suggestion. Now, based on Sally Yates's 302, Director Comey admitted that he would have informed the Obama White House Chief of Staff, Dennis McDonough, if this were occurring under analogous circumstances with President Obama and President Obama's national security advisor. So why this disparate treatment? Why would you have one standard where you would inform the chief of staff in one instance, but not in another administration?
Well, sir, I can't speak for why Jim Comey, what Jim Comey thought about that at the time. I'm not aware of that.
Okay. Mr. McCabe, we've hauled in a few different people to talk about the Crossfire hurricane investigation in front of this committee. And so far, we haven't been able to get a single straight answer to some critical questions, including who in leadership at the FBI or at the Department of Justice knew about the serious flaws contained in the Carter Page FISA warrants before the original application was submitted on October 21st, 2016. Also, who knew by the time that the first renewal was submitted on January 12th, 2017? Or how about the second renewal on April 7th, 2017? And most importantly for today's purposes, who knew when you signed the third renewal on June 28th, 2017? Nobody seems to be telling us anything. Now, back in August, Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates told this committee that she had no idea where critical factual errors in the initial Carter Page application. She had no idea that those were there. A few weeks ago, Director Comey told this committee that he didn't know about the errors when he signed the initial applications and the subsequent renewals. And now you've told this committee what is your answer to these questions? Tell me what you were aware of as of those dates.
Well, I've been pretty clear that I was not aware of the errors that are identified in the IG's report or any other errors that were present in the package that I signed in June of 2017.
Mr. Chairman, my time's expiring. Could I get an additional 2 minutes? I think I can wrap this up in that time. Thank you. Now, you've stated in your written testimony that, quote, FISA remains one of the most important tools in our country's efforts to protect national security. The FBI is the custodian of that tool. I fully support every effort to ensure that the FBI's use of FISA maintains the high standards of the court and the American people that they demand and they deserve. Well, that's all well and good. I like the statement as far as it goes, but I would note, Mr. McCabe, that I've heard this line before. Not just once, I've heard it more times than I can possibly count over the last 10 years while I've been sitting on this committee. In fact, your comments are nearly identical to those that I've heard from FBI official after FBI official, from basically every FBI official who's testified in front of this committee on this issue. Trust us. We're the good guys. And we need these secret surveillance authorities in order to keep you safe. And furthermore, you don't need to worry about them. These aren't the droids you were looking for, because we're the good guys and we require a high level of approval. Well, it turns out, Mr. McCabe, none of the people involved in the high level of approval, those same people who have told me over and over again over the last decade that they were reviewing them and that that's why it was okay, none of them can answer these questions. So that's why we're here again. So I'm asking you now, how are we supposed to tell the American people to have confidence in the secretive FISA surveillance process if, mind you, this is hard to believe, no one in FBI leadership, no one in leadership of DOJ or FBI wants to admit that they were aware of serious flaws in a very high-profile investigation? And what assurances could you possibly give us that the FISA applications targeting everyday Americans, just U.S. citizens, not foreign suspected terrorists, and not even high-profile government officials in the United States, are subject to any stricter scrutiny? They simply can't be. The fact is, the FISA process must be reformed. We can't ask Americans to continue to give the federal government this enormous amount of unsupervised scrutiny and discretion, only to have it abused by this, and only to have the people who are accountable for it say they have no idea how these things happen. I can assure you that your abuse of the FISA process has cost you the trust of the American people. That in and of itself is tragic, and I don't use those words lightly. What's even more tragic is that they've cost a great agency, one that I worked with as a federal prosecutor and for which I've had great respect, and where there are still countless hardworking, honest men and women who earn the FBI's good name every day. Their reputation has been sullied And the Bureau's ability to do its job has been seriously impaired by these missteps. That's why this structure must change, and I won't rest until it does.
Mr. McCabe, would you like to respond?
Sure. So I certainly can't respond to things that other people have said to Senator Lee over the last 10 years. I do agree with you that this process, the IG's oversight, the report that they delivered, has uncovered that there are problems with the way, potentially, with the way that the FBI is handling its FISA responsibilities. I think I'm fairly confident in saying that this experience has exposed, to me at least, that we have been overconfident in the process that we've been using for years. We've been overconfident in in the oversight that we've been subjecting each FISA package to. And I think that we need to go back and very, thoroughly look at how do we change that process to ensure that the errors and the omissions in these packages that we now know about don't happen again. I agree with you in that respect, Senator.
It won't change. We have to change it. It's the law that's the problem. It gives an unfair amount of discretion to human beings who have proven time and again they can't be trusted with it. Thank you.
Senator